Sakura Taisen as a series, it's always kind of been in the background of my mind. I've seen stuff pop up for it now and again, and I have a basic understanding of its premise, but I never really went in on it for whatever reason. So now that I'm this deep in this whole reviewing business, I'm looking at it rather quizzically, because I feel like I missed a memo somewhere. It's important to note that this series was more focused on its games than on its anime, but at the same time, the anime made it to the States, the game didn't. Maybe that's because it was a Saturn game. Possible. It also is very likely that it didn't make it to the States because it's kind of weird. That's all beside the point. You know, there's a lot of anime out there that people would call pointedly Japanese. A lot of thought processes for characters, the sort of introspection and worries they face are all somewhat foreign to Western sensibilities. You have shows like that, and then you have Sakura Wars. The theme song itself is basically, hey, remember Taisho-era Japan? That sure was great. Hint, no it wasn't. Early Imperial Japan coincided with late American imperialism when it came to oppressing other countries through military force, and looking fondly back on it makes this liberally minded viewer go, huh? However, in spite of all that, this show takes place in a universe where we very pointedly do not talk about the war. Which war? Any of them. The point I'm very laboriously getting around to is that this show takes place in the 1920s, in a world far removed from our own. In Tokyo, there is a growing evil power, one that reanimates half-demon machines called Wakiji, to go and make trouble. In this version of the world, spiritual energy is very real and very tangible, and can be measured scientifically. Lucky for us, people all around the world have had the foresight to either force it through their bloodlines, or train it up over the generation, so now we're kind of at a point where people with spirit powers are readily available for combat. Handy, isn't it? Keeping this well in mind, our protagonist is one Shingyuji Sakura, a woman whose normal attire puts her immediately at odds with the rest of her westernized surroundings. Most of modern Japanese history is based around the conceptualization of the modern versus the traditional, and nowhere is this more brought to the fore than in Sakura. And by extension, the representative of modernity is Sumire. But more on her later. Sakura has come to Tokyo to join the Imperial Flower Brigade to fight demons and all that, following the death of her father. There's only a few problems here, of course. She's kind of a moron, because having smart, capable characters is apparently some sort of faux pas that I don't understand. Instead, she has a really big heart, which I'm certain is a medical condition and not a character perk. But yes, goofy gopher or not, the other problem was that the cover story for this military operation is a theater troupe. You know what kind of people inhabit theater troupes? Divas, self-righteous idiots, stuck-up assholes, Sumire, Maria, Iris, characters that can go take a flying leap and have little to no redeeming qualities? Sakura isn't what you would call a great leading lady, but man, none of these other girls are worth much either. So after spending her opening moments on screen by being a complete dirtbag, Sumire makes Sakura run off in tears, where she promptly, accidentally breaks all of their robots. And you thought your first day on the job was bad. Luckily, they managed to patch things up, because their commander tells Sumire to stick it. This is where the tension between Eastern and Western philosophy lies in this show. Sakura is very traditionally Japanese in a broad sense, and Sumire is conceptually very westernized. She is the caricature of a quote-unquote independent woman. Haughty, bitchy, superficial, self-indulgent, and self-righteous. Uh-oh, maybe modernity isn't all it's cracked up to be, as evidenced by an obnoxiously written character. Better stick with the one we know and understand, huh? Obviously, we're supposed to be rooting for Sakura, but what other choice do we have? There's probably some fucking pervo out there who's like, oh, I want Sumire to step on my wiener, but that guy can precisely fuck off. The point I'm belaboredly trying to get to is that Sumire is awful, and Sakura is only better because she's not a dumpster fire of a human being. But yes, now we as a collective audience have to follow the misadventures of 4, later 6 women who mostly hate each other. Now, I'm not precisely sure how accurate this was to the original games, but there's gotta be some kind of adaptation decay at work here. Because I don't know how anyone would have gotten through this on console otherwise. It wouldn't be so bad if they were all just a bunch of jerks who had to learn to work together and sing and dance and all that. But that's not the case. No, they're also expected to go and fight demons in robots that look like garbage cans with big steam engines on the back. Now, I may have been fooled, misled, or otherwise lied to, but I thought this was supposed to be an action show. It's more like an inaction show.
Who writes this crap? All right, me.
By the end of the series, I was just like, for the love of God, kill something already. More importantly, we're supposed to be really invested into their character arcs, but the problem is, writ large, why do we care about this pack of morons? Aren't there bigger problems afoot here? It really cuts off the legs of a show when the background plot is more interesting than the characters that are front and center. All of the scenes in which the disposable side characters are trying to uncover a mystery here are far more interesting than watching the team sit there and passively hate each other. Luckily, they get an infusion of new characters later on, so it takes the spotlight off of Sumire and her amazing awfulness a bit. And once again, maybe this is just my own weird sort of survival-focused mindset, but don't you fucking idiots have something better to be doing when the fate of the country is at stake? I know this is some sort of big narrative device that makes characters act quote-unquote more human, but this kind of thing is what gets people killed needlessly. And yes, I know this is probably a real struggle for Sumire, but when you're a frontline unit in a war against forces only barely understood, maybe drop the damn ego for a second. There's an awful lot of things going on with this show that I don't particularly care for from a narrative perspective. And most of them have to do with the characterization and how it was decided what was going to get more screen time. So in addition to Sumire and Sakura, we have the cold Ukrainian woman named Maria, who is cold and Ukrainian. She's one of two pilots who use firearms as their spirit weapon, but more importantly, she's the captain until a certain character shows up. Now, she's a lousy captain to be sure, because she can't keep them functioning as a unit, but it's because she has a tragic backstory. Yeah, join the club, kiddo. She's rather apathetic, all told, but at least they don't do to her in the show what they did to her in the games. While she reacts much more naturally in the show, her in-game counterpart just kind of accepts it, citing gender as a real reason that she should be replaced with a man. Next we have Iris, who's the creepy token Lolita, and basically a waste of a character, because by the fourth episode or so, she's been reduced to a walking alarm system. Joining the team after a number of disastrous combat missions is Ojiro, the only male. He immediately gets promoted to captain, despite having piloted a Kobu all of once. Steady on, Sakura Wars, steady on. They also get a mechanic from China named Li Koran, and a basic understanding of history from this time period once again makes me go, huh? There are a few very important things to know about Japanese relations with the rest of Asia.
Everybody fucking hates them.
No, seriously, this time period is only a few decades removed from the Sino-Japanese War, of which there were two, and the Russo-Japanese War, which there was only one, but wouldn't you know it, nobody ever seems to talk about it. So it's more than a little peculiar that someone would actually come to Japan from China to work on this without seeing a whole lot of animosity, either one way or the other. Our final character is Kana Kirishima, who's from Okinawa. And for some reason in the dub they decided to go with a combination of Big Dumb Girl and Brooklyn accent for this character, and frankly, I'm not shocked.
Everyone ready for a hearty breakfast?
She's probably the best character, or certainly the one I liked best, because she's not a complete asshole and enjoyable to watch fight. Like, maybe I like him on the tall side, and maybe that's a completely separate issue. It is at this point that I must raise a hand and admit that 12 episodes in, I was about ready to blow my own dick off if it meant that I could stop watching this show. Fear not, dear viewer, I carried on and finished it, but man, this first heap of episodes has all the earmarks of a complete train wreck. It's an action show that forgets to put the damn action in, the characters are generally obnoxious, and the animation is almost laughable for a show that came out in 2000. I know, I'm shocked as you are. Madhouse, what the hell? What is this scrub tier bullshit you put out? I was positive this show came out in 1995. The dub is awful, too. Surprisingly bad for ADV. This was done by the B team at ADV, and man does it show. The acting is wooden for the leads, but not for the background characters, and there's not a lot of congruity between how names are pronounced. Sumire gets particularly bad, getting called Sumira multiple times in an episode, even though they get the flourish on Sakura right without even batting an eyelash. If this was the only problem, I'd probably give this a pass, but it's one of the many issues with the way this dub was written. Characters will say something that's not even close to keeping with the subs, and at times it feels like they were almost trying to go for a gag dub sort of thing. Now, I can't say for sure for want of information, but I'm gonna bet that there was some sort of intention to get this on TV at some point, which would vaguely explain a few of the quirks. But it doesn't excuse the derpiness, oh no. Don't even get me started on Leave Coloron's voice.
They're sitting ducks, Ogami. You want to do the honors, or should I?
Oh look, it's Delmo from Cosplay Complex. You remember her voice? Yeah, that worked great for her, but she's also supposed to be a foot-tall fairy. But, you know, as always, it's really not the actor's fault. It's definitely the director's for letting this kind of thing slide. The second half of the series is far superior with much more action, and the art looks better right out of the gate. This is what I was expecting from this show, but with such an abysmal first half, I can't fathom why it took so long to get to this point. It still looks like it came out in 1997, but the point stands. There are so many wasted episodes of characters that really didn't need this kind of build-up. They're extremely basic in design, and it really tells you all you need to know in a single glance. They really don't go much deeper than just surface level, at least in this version of the story. The first half is supposed to show you how these characters are gelling together as a unit, but they don't actually gel together as a unit. The second half shows what you really needed to have going on from the first episode. Action, character interaction, and focus. Focus is what makes or breaks a show before anything else, and if I feel it's not being respectful of the time it's been given, then it's probably not going to go very well. This second half of the show is far from perfect, but it definitely puts on its serious face a whole lot better than the first half. It's just a shame that it took so long to get to this point. Here's a helpful hint for watching this series, if you absolutely must. If it looks like they're going to spend the majority of an episode screwing around on stage, skip it. I'll admit, it's a clever idea to build spirit, energy, and camaraderie by putting on plays, but it takes screen time away from actually progressing the plot, which is very much not cool. And while it's important to make the combat feel like it has some weight, maybe don't let our heroes get their asses kicked so much. It doesn't really make the villains look strong as it makes the heroes look incompetent and weak, and while they're learning from experience, they're still also just getting their teeth kicked in. While it's perfectly acceptable and even recommended to have some infighting between your characters, if it becomes a detriment to the continued survival of a team, give them the boot. That is the entirety of Sumire's character. It becomes Maria's character for a few episodes. It's absolutely poor writing. When you're confronted with this sort of characterization for more than a few OVA episodes at best, then it stops being annoying and becomes the rock that drags down the whole show. But you know what the worst part is? There really is already a better version of this show in the OVAs, which also came out in the States. This series is, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a pale imitation of the OVAs. The colors are more faded, the characters look worse, the acting isn't as good, and even the song sounds worse. Well, just take a look at this. The OVA version, as demonstrated, has far more passion and flourish to it, and all the voices sound like they're different. The TV version is much more muted and has everyone singing the melody instead of using their own personalities and skills, if the intent was to have all the girls singing together like I think it is. The TV version of the song is just like the TV version of the show, which is stilted, faded, and uninspired. The only problem I can really think of for the OVAs is that it's heavily relying on you having played the games sequentially to know where you are in the story relative to what has happened in the games. But you know what? It's still overall a much more interesting version of this series.
You know, if this was just some flash-in-the-pan, fly-by-night show about, this usual schoolgirl crap, I wouldn't feel so weird about trashing it so heavily. But Sakura Wars is kind of an institution. It's got 5 OVAs, a movie, a TV series, and 7 or 8 games, all on different platforms from the Saturn to the Wii. I'm not sure if there's anything on next gen, but it doesn't matter. But so, this is a franchise. This is a thing, and for it to come out and be so unashamedly, unabashedly awful is so peculiar to me. Which is a real shame because the OVAs are pretty good. The rest of the series isn't that bad. But you want to know the kicker for the whole thing, though? Out of everything that this show does wrong, the re-release, the Sakura Wars box set by Sentai Filmworks, not their Sentai Selects, which I think is different, but the version that you will readily find available, it's a goddamn spindle case. But yes, much like a spindle case, it is a carnival of errors, of bad decision making, and at the end, it's just more effort than it's worth to get what you want out of it.